Hi, Jimmy Kerstein, author of The Butcher's Guide and Insider's View. Today we're going to show you how to cut up a beef inside round, or a top round as it's called. First thing I want to do is show you where it comes from. This is a kind of a crude drawing of a full cut round, and with the bone here. And this long muscle here is the inside round or top round. The opposite side of it is the bottom round, and then the little round piece is the eye of round. You can kind of see I've put a dotted line here around the other side of the leg, and that's where the knuckle is, or the sirloin tip. So today what we're going to do, we're going to do the top round. Okay, starting here, what I have is a full top round that I bought. I bought it at the cash and carry store. It's been aging in my refrigerator for about 6 weeks in the shop fridge, so hopefully it'll be tender, just wet aging. Left it in the bag I bought it in, and just let it sit out there, and it got a little bit of purge on it, a little bit of liquid, and we just poured that off and kind of patted it dry, and we're good to go. We paid $66.28 for this piece of meat. It weighs a little over 26 pounds, and I paid $2.49 a pound for it. Just to tell you where we're at. And the knives we're using today is a Forstner curved boning knife with a flexible blade and a Forstner steak knife for slicing. First thing we want to do is this is the top of the leg, if you can imagine it being like that on the inside, and the further down the leg it gets is the tougher it's going to be. So we're going to get our best steaks off the top of the front of this. So while I've got it up in the air, you can kind of see, if you can see the little pieces of bone where they pulled out the H bone when they bone this piece of meat. So what I want to do is just get my knife under there and just remove those little bony pieces. This is the best time to take care of those because you can see them, and one of the things I'm making here today is some ground meat, so I definitely don't want any of that. And there's a little piece of kind of hard fat there, hard gristle. Cut that off. I don't usually cut meat with it sticking up in the air like this, so it's better to show you how to do it that way. Alrighty? Okay, with those little pieces removed, the next thing we're going to do, there's a little bit of heavy fat cover on the front of it here. We're going to remove that. We're going to use our steak knife for that. You just want to get underneath, and you can feel that it's kind of thick there. So you just want to remove that, and you can just slide over the top. And it's okay if you remove most of it, or if you get into the meat, you can feel this is a real heavy piece there. So we're going to just cut right down through that. Again, you can feel it. If you touch it, you can feel the heavier fat cover there. Okay. I'll set that aside. Throw that in the barrel. And then turning it over, we're gonna kind of clean up the inside here too as well. We're gonna trim off some more fat on this piece here. If you like, this is a wonderful piece of meat if you have a family gathering or a charity raiser and you want to do a great big piece of meat as a baron of beef or a roasted piece of meat. Just buy this and cook it whole. You know, just leave the fat on it. Maybe cut it into 3 pieces across like that.
Sometimes you see this whole thing at a carving station, don't you?
You do. Sometimes in a, I call them cheap buffets, where they don't do the prime rib, they'll do a beef round roast, and this is what they're serving, is this eye of round. So what we're doing here is we're just removing this extra fat across the top. Then this little piece of meat on top here, we're going to cut that off. This we can throw in the grind. Set that there. Okay. So now what we want to do is let me turn this around here. We're going to remove the cap here. And part of the reason we want to do that is so you can see the grain of the meat. Unfortunately, some of the young folks or the young people cutting meat in the store nowadays, they'll just take this piece of meat and just start cutting steaks. And you can see when we pull the cap off, you'll see the grain of the meat, and that's why you get the meat that's not cut across the grain, that's a little chewy. So you can see this little piece of the cap here. What we want to do is get underneath it here. There's a natural seam. And just start pulling that up. And you see that? And we're just going to pull that whole cap right off. Now that we've taken that off, we're going to continue to clean up the top of the beef here. Knife out of the way. Just want to get underneath the skin. Just like that. See, we're not removing much meat that's edible there. And I'm going to come around here, do the same thing, pull that off. And just a little bit of gristle there. Now, what I want to show you is how the grain of the meat, you can see, Debbie, if you can focus on that, how it comes. It goes this way, and if you were to cut it this way, you're going to have the grain of the meat is going to be sideways. So what you want to do is you want to turn it around, and you want to cut it with the grain of the meat opposite. So you're cutting, that's what makes the meat more tender, is when you cut it cross grain. So what we're going to do is we're going to square up the front of it here. And this is probably the best, most tender piece of the top round there. And then we're going to cut a nice London broil off the front of that. And as we do that, we're just going to take these little bits of meat. We're going to use those as grind. We're going to set that there. And if you like, you could cut another top round off that. I'll go ahead and pull this little bit off here too, because it's going to come off anyway. And we'll just, to make it easy, we're going to trim the inside of this as well. There's a little kind of a fat pocket and a vein right there, and you just want to kind of reach in there and pull that out. We don't want to grind the veins, so we're going to throw that away. And then there's kind of a thin silver skin on the inside. We're going to pull that off before we start cutting steaks as well. Okay, so now we've got a really nice piece of meat. We might as well just go ahead and do this all the way since we've got it here. More of the silver skin, I just want to get underneath it. Slide that off. There we go. Pull that away. Now we're just ready to slice. And again, let's kind of square that up. More ground meat for us. Now when you're slicing meat, you want to kind of avoid the sawing motion. You want to just kind of go down through it, press and pull, so you don't have a steak with a lot of feathered edges to it. And round steak is best if it's cut about 3/4 of an inch, because for the most part we're going to pan fry all of this. See what beautiful steaks those are. Remember, we paid $2.49 a pound, but we're probably going to throw away a good 5 pounds. So we're probably closer to $3, but that's a pretty good price for some ground round that you know what's in it, and some beautiful top round steaks, as well as a nice London broil.
Or you could have had 3 roasts, right?
Or you could cut roast. You could make anything out of this, jerky, whatever you want to make, really. So again, when you're slicing, kind of avoid the, see how we're cutting steaks where we don't have a feathery edge. Just hold your flush like that. We're going to take maybe one more steak off here. We're getting fairly far down. Now we're going to turn our attention to the pieces we have left over. This piece is, you could grind all this, of course. This piece and this piece, I think are going to make some nice stir fries. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim off that bit of gristle on the outside, a little bit of silver skin. Cutting off anything we don't want to have in our stir fry. And then this we're just going to take and cut it into pieces and make some nice stir fry. Cut it kind of thin. This will just make lovely stir fry. Cut in bite-sized pieces. Stir fry, or you could do stroganoff out of this as well. Same thing with this. We're going to trim the cap off that too, the bit of thin gristle. The nice thing about cutting your own meat is all these little pieces that you really don't want to eat. that might wind up on your plate if you bought it in a supermarket, then you can trim those off. Again, we're just going to cut this into stir-fry pieces. And one more little piece there. So we've got a nice pile of stir-fry there. The rest of this, we're going to turn it into ground meat. And mostly with this ground meat, what I want to do is remove any obvious big pieces of gristle. We can leave some of the fat on. So we're going to cut this into pieces to run through the grinder. And we'll go back to our cap here. And with our cap, this is really part of the knuckle, is what that is. This piece is a thin piece of meat that in the butcher shop, what they would do is take and clean this up, or denude it, is what they call it. Take all the fat and gristle off of it, and then they would run it through the cuber and make cube steaks out of it. So we're just going to trim off, because we don't want that in our grind. Trim off some of this silver skin. And then we're going to leave the fat on it, and we're just going to cut it in pieces and grind it. Some nice ground round. So we're going to finish this up. I'm going to run this through the grinder, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like when it's done.
You have a video on grinding, don't you?
I do. I have a very good great video on how to grind meat. Again, here, see, we're making our own ground meat. There's some heavy gristle there. We don't want to eat that, so let's cut that off. And this one is kind of very much the same thing, but you can see has a vein going through it and some heavy gristle at the end. Just want to trim all that out. And the best way, if you're not familiar with it, just start cutting it in pieces you're comfortable with. There's a vein we're going to get rid of. And some gristle on the inside. We don't need that in our ground meat. Anyway, just cut it in pieces you're comfortable with. You can see there's a vein goes through the center, so let's just cut that out. It's going to make a nice, probably a 15% grind. Again, here, another piece of that vein. You could make stew out of this, I suppose, but honestly, I don't think round, because it's so lean, makes a very good stew. I really like to make stew out of a chuck, so I like the fat in the chuck better. So there we go. So we'll grind this and show you what it looks like. We have a nice stack of ground meat. We have a nice stack of stir fry. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 nice round steaks on a London broil, and probably good close to 5 pounds of ground meat for $66. All right, we're back. Just a little recap of what we did. We paid $66.28 for our top round, our inside round, and at supermarket prices tonight, that had a retail value at $116.32. So we saved $50 by cutting a little meat at home for ourselves. And from that, we got 5 packages of ground beef and 1 package of London broil, 2 packages of stir fry, and 9 packages of really nicely trimmed, lean round steak. It's all packaged for a family of 4, which translates to less than $1 per person per meal. So 17 packages, less than $4 a package, less than $1 a person. I think it's a heck of a deal. Certainly worth the time. Not to mention that the ground meat is something you know exactly what's in it. It's pure ground round. The steaks are all very well trimmed with no fat or gristle or any extras. So give it a try. It's certainly worth your time.